As I was considering the way a painter I employ went about his work, I had a mind to imitate him. He chooses the best spot, the middle of each wall, to put a picture labored over with all his skill, and the empty space all around it he fills with grotesques, which are fantastic paintings whose only charm lies in their variety and strangeness. And what are these things of mine, in truth, but grotesque and monstrous bodies, pieced together of diverse members, without definite shape, having no order, sequence, or proportion other than accidental? A lovely woman tapers off into a fish. Worse, I do indeed go along with my painter in the second point, but I fall short in the first and better part, for my ability does not go far enough for me to dare to undertake a rich, polished picture formed according to art. It has occurred to me to borrow one from Ethne de la Poesie, which will do honor to all the rest of his work. It is a discourse to which he gave the name La Servitude Volontaire, but those who did not know this have since very fitly rebaptized it Le Contre Un. He wrote it by way of essay in his early youth, in honor of liberty against tyrants. It has long been circulating in the hands of men of understanding, not without great and well merited commendation, for it is a fine thing, and as full as can be. Still, it is far from being the best he could do, and if at the more mature age, when I knew him, he had adopted a plan such as mine of putting his ideas in writing, we should see many rare things which would bring us very close to the glory of antiquity. For particularly in the matter of natural gifts, I know no one who can be compared with him, but nothing of his has remained except his treatise, and that by chance, and I think he never saw it after it left his hands, and some observations on that edict of January, made famous by our civil wars, which will perhaps yet find their place elsewhere. That was all I could recover of what he left. I, to whom in his will, with such loving recommendation, with death in his throat, he bequeathed his library and his papers, except for the little volume of his works which I have had published. And yet I am particularly obliged to this work, since it served as the medium of our first acquaintance, for it was shown to me long before I had seen him, and gave me my first knowledge of his name, thus starting on its way this friendship which together we fostered, as long as God willed, so entire and so perfect that certainly you will hardly read of the like, and among men of today you see no trace of it in practice. So many coincidences are needed to build up such a friendship that it is a lot if fortune can do it once in 3 centuries. There is nothing to which nature seems to have inclined us more than to society, and Aristotle says that good legislators have had more care for friendship than for justice. Now, the ultimate point in the perfection of society is this: for in general, all associations are forged and nourished by pleasure or profit, by public or private needs, are the less beautiful and noble, and the less friendships, in so far as they mix into friendship another cause and object and reward than friendship itself. Nor do the four ancient types, natural, social, hospitable, erotic, come up to real friendship, either separately or together. From children toward fathers, it is rather respect. Friendship feeds on communication, which cannot exist between them because of their too great inequality, and might perhaps interfere with the duties of nature. For neither can all the secret thoughts of fathers be communicated to children, lest this beget an unbecoming intimacy, nor could the admonitions and corrections, which are one of the chief duties of friendship, be administered by children to fathers. There have been nations where by custom the children killed their fathers, and others where the fathers killed their children, to avoid the interference that they can sometimes cause each other, and by nature the one depends on the destruction of the other. There have been philosophers who disdain this natural tie. Witness Aristippus, when pressed about the affection he owed his children for having come out of him, he began to spit, saying that that had come out of him just as well, and that we also bred lice and worms, and that other, whom Plutarch wanted to reconcile with his brother, said, I don't think any more of him for having come out of the same hole. Truly, the name of brother is a beautiful name, and full of affection, and for that reason he and I made our alliance of brotherhood. But that confusion of ownership, the dividing, and the fact that the richness of one is the poverty of the other, wonderfully softens and loosens the shoulder of brotherhood. Since brothers have to guide their careers along the same path and at the same rate, it is inevitable that they often jostle and clash with each other. Furthermore, why should the harmony and kinship which begets these true and perfect friendships be found in them? Father and son may be of entirely different dispositions, and brothers also. He is my son, he is my kinsman, but he is an unsociable man, a knave, or a fool. And then the more they are friendships which law and natural obligation impose on us, the less of our choice and free will there is in them. And our free will has no product more properly its own than affection and friendship. Not that I have not experienced all the friendship that can exist in that situation, having had the best father that ever was, and the most indulgent, even in his extreme old age, and being of a family famous and exemplary from father to son in this matter of brotherly concord, known to others for fatherly affection toward my brothers. Chorus. To compare this brotherly affection with affection for women, even though it is the result of our choice, it cannot be done, nor can we put the love of women in the same category. Its ardor, I confess, of us that goddess is not unaware, who blends a bitter sweetness with her care. Catullus is more active, more scorching, and more intense, but it is an impetuous and fickle flame, undulating and variable, a fever flame, subject to fits and lulls that holds us only by one corner. And friendship is a general and universal warmth, moderate and even, besides a constant and subtle warmth, all gentleness and smoothness, with nothing bitter and stinging about it. What is more, in love there is nothing but a frantic desire for what flees from us. Just as a huntsman will pursue a hare over hill and dale, in weather cold or fair, the captured hare is worthless in his sight. He only hastens after things in flight. Also, as soon as it enters the boundaries of friendship, that is to say, harmony of wills, it grows faint and languid. Enjoyment destroys it, as having a fleshly end, subject to satiety. Friendship, on the contrary, is enjoyed according as it is desired. It is bred, nourished, and increased only in enjoyment, since it is spiritual and the soul grows refined by practice. During the reign of this perfect friendship, those fleeting affections once found a place in me, not to speak of my friend, who confesses only too many of them in these verses. Thus, these two passions within me came to be known to each other, but to be compared, never. The first keeping its course in proud and lofty flight, and disdainfully watching the other making its way far beneath it. As for marriage, for one thing, it is a bargain to which only the entrance is free, its continuance being constrained and forced, depending otherwise than on our will, and a bargain ordinarily made for other ends. For another, there supervene a thousand foreign tangles to unravel, enough to break the thread and trouble the course of a lively affection. Whereas in friendship there are no dealings or business, except with itself. Besides, to tell the truth, the ordinary capacity of women is inadequate for that communion and fellowship which is the nurse of the sacred bond, nor does their soul seem firm enough to endure the strain of so tight and durable a knot. And indeed, but for that, if such a relationship, free and voluntary, could be built up, in which not only would the souls have this complete enjoyment, but the bodies would also share in the alliance, so that the entire man would be engaged, it is certain that the resulting friendship would be fuller and more complete. But this sex in no instance has yet succeeded in attaining it, and by the common agreement of the ancient schools is excluded from it. And that other, licentious Greek love, is justly abhorred by our morality, since it involved, moreover, according to their practice, such a necessary disparity in age and such a difference in the lover's functions, it did not correspond closely enough with the perfect union and harmony that we require here. For what is this love of friendship? Why does no one love either an ugly youth or a handsome old man? Cicero. For even the picture the Academy paints of it will not contradict me. I think, if I say this on the subject, that this first frenzy which the son of Venus inspired in the lover's heart at the sight of the flower of tender youth, in which they allow all the insolent and passionate acts that immoderate ardor can produce, was simply founded on external beauty, the false image of corporeal generation, for it could not be founded on the spirit, the signs of which were still hidden, which was only at its birth and before the age of budding. If this frenzy seized the base heart, the means of his courtship were riches, presents, favor, and advancement to dignities, and other such base merchandise, which were generally condemned. If it fell on a nobler heart, the means were also noble. Philosophical instruction, precepts to revere religion, obey the laws, die for the good of the country, examples of valor, prudence, justice, the lover studying to make himself acceptable by the grace and beauty of his soul, that of his body being long since faded, and hoping by this mental fellowship to establish a firmer and more lasting pact. When this courtship attained its effect in due season, for whereas they do not require of the lover that he use leisure and discretion in his enterprise, they strictly require it of the loved one, because he had to judge an inner beauty difficult to know and hidden from discovery. Then there was born in the loved one the desire of spiritual conception through the medium of spiritual beauty. This was the main thing here, and corporeal beauty accidental and secondary, quite the opposite of the lover. For this reason, they prefer the loved one, and prove that the gods also prefer him, and strongly rebuke the poet Aeschylus for having, in the love of Achilles and Patroclus, given the lover's part to Achilles, who was in the first fearless bloom of his youth, and the handsomest of all the Greeks. After this general communion was established, the stronger and worthier part of it exercising its functions and predominating, they say that there resulted from it fruits very useful personally and to the public, that it constituted the strength of the countries which accepted the practice, and the principal defense of equity and liberty. Witness the salutary loves of Harmodius and Aristogeiton. Therefore they call it sacred and divine, and by their reckoning only the violence of tyrants and the cowardice of the common people are hostile to it. In short, all that can be said in favor of the Academy is that this was a love ending in friendship, which corresponds pretty well to the Stoic definition of love. Love is the attempt to form a friendship inspired by beauty. Cicero. I return to my description of a more equitable and equal kind of friendship. Only those are to be judged friendships in which the characters have been strengthened and matured by age. For the rest, what we ordinarily call friends and friendships are nothing but acquaintanceships and familiarities formed by some chance or convenience, by means of which our souls are bound to each other. In the friendship I speak of, our souls mingle and blend with each other so completely that they efface the seam that joined them and cannot find it again. If you press me to tell why I loved him, I feel that this cannot be expressed except by answering, because it was he, because it was I, beyond all my understanding, beyond what I can say about this in particular. There was, I know not what, inexplicable and fateful force that was the mediator of this union. We saw each other before we met because of the reports we heard of each other, which had more effect on our affection than such reports would reasonably have. I think it was by some ordinance from heaven. We embraced each other by our names, and at our first meeting, which by chance came at a great feast and gathering in the city, we found ourselves so taken with each other, so well acquainted, so bound together, that from that time on nothing was so close to us as each other. He wrote an excellent Latin satire, which is published, in which he excuses and explains the precipitancy of our mutual understanding, so promptly grown to its perfection. Having so little time to last, and having begun so late, for we were both grown men, and he a few years older than I, it could not lose time and conform to the pattern of mild and regular friendships, which need so many precautions in the form of long preliminary associations. Our friendship has no other model than itself, and can be compared only with itself. It is not one special consideration, nor two, nor three, nor four, nor 1,000. It is, I know not what, quintessence of all this mixture, which having seized my whole will, led it to plunge and lose itself in his, which having seized his whole will, led it to plunge and lose itself in mine, with equal hunger, equal rivalry. I say lose in truth, for neither of us reserved anything for himself, nor was anything either his or mine. When Laelius, in the presence of the Roman consuls, who, after condemning Tiberius Gracchus, prosecuted all those who had been in his confidence, came to ask Caius Blasius, who was Gracchus's best friend, how much he would have been willing to do for him, he answered, "Everything." "What, everything?" pursued Laelius. "And what if he had commanded you to set fire to our temples. He would never have commanded me to do that, replied Blasius. But what if he had? Laelius insisted. I would have obeyed, he replied. If he was such a perfect friend to Gracchus, as the histories say, he did not need to offend the consuls by this last bold confession, and he should not have abandoned the assurance he had of Gracchus's will. But nevertheless, those who charge that this answer is seditious do not fully understand this mystery, and fail to assume first what is true, that he had Gracchus's will up his sleeve, both by power over him and by knowledge of him. They were friends more than citizens, friends more than friends, or enemies of their country, or friends of ambition and disturbance. Having committed themselves absolutely to each other, they held absolutely the reins of each other's inclination. And if you assume that this team was guided by the strength and leadership of reason, as indeed it is quite impossible to harness it without that, Blasius's answer is as it should have been. If their actions went astray, they were by my measure neither friends to each other nor friends to themselves. For that matter, this answer has no better ring than would mine if someone questioned me in that fashion. If your will commanded you to kill your daughter, would you kill her? And I said yes, for that does not bear witness to any consent to do so, because I have no doubt at all about my will, and just as little about that of such a friend. It is not in the power of all the arguments in the world to dislodge me from the certainty I have of the intentions and judgments of my friend. Not one of his actions could be presented to me, whatever appearance it might have, that I could not immediately find the motive for it. Our souls pulled together in such unison, they regarded each other with such ardent affection, with a like affection, revealed themselves to each other to the very depths of our hearts, that not only did I know his soul as well as mine, but I should certainly have trusted myself to him more readily than to myself. Let not these other common friendships be placed in this rank. I have as much knowledge of them as another, and of the most perfect of their type. But I advise you not to confuse the rules of the two. You would make a mistake. You must walk in those other friendships bridle in hand, with prudence and precaution. The knot is not so well tied that there is no cause to mistrust it. Love him, Chilo used to say, as if you are to hate him some day. Hate him as if you are to love him. This precept, which is so abominable in this sovereign and masterful friendship, is healthy in the practice of ordinary and customary friendships, in regard to which we must use the remark that Aristotle often repeated: O my friends, there is no friend. In this noble relationship, services and benefits on which other friendships feed do not even deserve to be taken into account. The reason for this is the complete fusion of our wills. For just as the friendship I feel for myself receives no increase from the help I give myself in time of need, whatever the Stoics say, and as I feel no gratitude to myself for the service I do myself, so the union of such friends, being truly perfect, makes them lose the sense of such duties and hate and banish from between them these words of separation and distinction: benefit, obligation, gratitude, request, thanks, and the like, everything actually being in common between them, and wills, thoughts, judgments, goods, wives, children, honor, and life, and their relationship being that of one soul in two bodies. According to Aristotle's very apt definition, they can neither lend nor give anything to each other. That is why the lawmakers, to honor marriage with some imaginary resemblance to this divine union, forbid gifts between husband and wife, wishing thus to imply that everything should belong to each of them, and that they have nothing to divide and split up between them. If, in the friendship I speak of, one could give to the other, it would be the one who received the benefit who would oblige his friend, for each of them seeking above all things to benefit the other. The one who provides the matter and the occasion is the liberal one, giving his friend the satisfaction of doing for him what he most wants to do. When the philosopher Diogenes was short of money, he used to say that he asked it back of his friends, not that he asked for it. And to show how this works in practice, I will tell you an ancient example that is singular. Eudemidas of Corinth had two friends, Trixenus, a Ciconian, and Boethius, a Corinthian. When he came to die, he being poor and his two friends rich, he made his will thus: I leave this to Boethius, to feed my mother and support her in her old age; this to Trixenus, to see my daughter married and give her the biggest dowry he can; and in case one of them should chance to die, I substitute the survivor in his place. Those who first saw this will laughed at it, but his heirs, having been informed of it, accepted it with singular satisfaction. And when one of them, Trixenus, died 5 days later, and the place of substitute was opened to Eurystheus, he supported the mother with great care, and of 5 talents he had in his estate, he gave 2.5 to his only daughter for her marriage, and 2.5 for the marriage of the daughter of Eudemidas, holding their weddings on the same day. This example is quite complete, except for one circumstance, which is the plurality of friends. For this perfect friendship I speak of is indivisible. Each one gives himself so wholly to his friend that he has nothing left to distribute elsewhere. On the contrary, he is sorry that he is not double, triple, or quadruple, and that he has not several souls and several wills to confer them all on this one object. Common friendships can be divided up. One may love in one man his beauty, in another his easygoing ways, in another liberality, in one paternal love, in another brotherly love, and so forth. But this friendship that possesses the soul and rules it with absolute sovereignty cannot possibly be double. If two called for help at the same time, which one would you run to? They demanded conflicting services of you. How would you arrange it? If one confided to your silence a thing that would be useful for the other to know, how would you extricate yourself? A single dominant friendship dissolves all other obligations. The secret I have sworn to reveal to no other man, I can impart without perjury to the one who is not another man. He is myself. It is a great enough miracle to be doubled, and those who talk of tripling themselves do not realize the loftiness of the thing. Nothing is extreme that can be matched. And he who supposes that of two men I love one just as much as the other, and that they love each other and me just as much as I love them, multiplies into a fraternity the most singular and unified of all things, of which even a single one is the rarest in the world to find. The rest of this story fits in very well with what I was saying, for Eudemidas bestows upon his friends the kindness and favor of using them for his need. He leaves them heirs to this liberality of his, which consists of putting into their hands a chance to do him good. and without doubt the strength of friendship is shown much more richly in his action than in that of Arethius. In short, these are actions inconceivable to anyone who has not tasted friendship, and which make me honor wonderfully the answer of that young soldier to Cyrus, who asked him for how much he would sell a horse with which he had just won the prize in a race, and whether he would exchange him for a kingdom. No, indeed, sire, but I would most willingly let him go to gain a friend, if I found a man worthy of such an alliance. That was not badly spoken, if I found one, for it is easy to find men fit for a superficial acquaintance, but for this kind, in which we act from the very bottom of our hearts, which holds nothing back, truly it is necessary that all the springs of action be perfectly clean and true. In the relationships which bind us only by one small part, we need to look out only for the imperfections that particularly concern that part. The religion of my doctor or my lawyer cannot matter. That consideration has nothing in common with the functions of the friendship they owe me. And in the domestic relationship between me and those who serve me, I have the same attitude. I scarcely inquire of a lackey whether he is chaste. I try to find out whether he is diligent, and I am not as much afraid of a gambling mule driver as of a weak one, or of a profane cook as of an ignorant one. I do not make it my business to tell the world what it should do. Enough others do that. But what I do in it, that is my practice. Do as you see fit. Terence. For the familiarity of the table, I look for wit, not prudence. For the bed, beauty before goodness. In conversation, competence, even without uprightness. Likewise in other matters. Just as the man who was found astride a stick, playing with his children, asked the man who surprised him thus to say nothing about it until he was a father himself, in the belief that the passion which would then be born in his soul would make him an equitable judge of such an act. So I would like to talk to people who have experienced what I tell, but knowing how far from common usage and how rare such a friendship is, I do not expect to find any good judge of it. For the very discourses that antiquity has left us on this subject seem to me weak compared with the feeling I have, and in this particular the facts surpass even the precepts of philosophy. Nothing shall I, while sane, compare with a dear friend, Horace. The ancient Penander declared that man happy who had been able to meet even the shadow of a friend. He was certainly right to say so, especially if he spoke from experience. For in truth, if I compare all the rest of my life, though by the grace of God I have spent it pleasantly, comfortably, and except for the loss of such a friend, free from any grievous affliction, and full of tranquillity of mind, having accepted my natural and original advantages without seeking other ones. If I compare it all, I say, with the 4 years which were granted me to enjoy the sweet company and society of that man, it is nothing but smoke, nothing but dark and dreary night, since the day I lost him, which I shall ever recall with pain, ever with remembrance. Thus, gods did you ordain. Virgil. I only drag on a weary life, and the very pleasures that come my way, instead of consoling me, redouble my grief for his loss. We went halves in everything. It seems to me that I am robbing him of his share, nor may I rightly taste of pleasures here alone. So I resolved, when he who shared my life is gone. Terence. I was already so formed and accustomed to being a second self everywhere, and only half of me seems to be alive now. Since an untimely blow has snatched away a part of my soul, why then do I delay? I, the remaining part, less dear than he, and not entire surviving. The same day brought ruin equally to him and me. Worse, there is no action or thought in which I do not miss him, as indeed he would have missed me. For just as he surpassed me infinitely in every other ability and virtue, so he did in the duty of friendship. Why should I be ashamed of exercising control, mourning so dear a soul? Worse, brother, your death has left me sad and lone. Since you departed, all our joys have gone, which while you lived, your sweet affection fed. My pleasures all lie shattered, with you dead. Our soul is buried, mine with yours entwined, and since then I have banished from my mind my studies and my spirit's dearest joys. Shall I never speak to you, or hear your voice, or see your face, more dear than life to me? At least I'll love you to eternity. Catullus. But let us listen awhile to this boy of 16, because I have found that this work has since been brought to light, and with evil intent, by those who seek to disturb and change the state of our government, without worrying whether they will improve it, and because they have mixed his work up with some of their own concoctions. I have changed my mind about putting it in here, and so that the memory of the author may not be damaged in the eyes of those who could not know his opinions and actions at close hand, I beg to advise them that this subject was treated by him in his boyhood only by way of an exercise, as a common theme hashed over in 1,000 places in books. I have no doubt that he believed what he wrote, for he was so conscientious as not to lie even in jest, and I know further that if he had had the choice, he would rather have been born in Venice than in Sarlat, and with reason. But he had another maxim sovereignly imprinted in his soul, to obey and submit most religiously to the laws under which he was born. There never was a better citizen, or one more devoted to the tranquillity of his country, or more hostile to the commotions and innovations of his time. He would much rather have used his ability to suppress them than to give them material that would excite them further. His mind was molded in the pattern of other ages than this. Now, in exchange for this serious work, I shall substitute another produced in that same season of his life, gayer and more lusty.